Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto become a dark mage of 6 paths. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Just a few minutes after the Ninetales is sealed in Naruto, a young 21-year-old looking man with pale rose-colored hair and light lavender eyes appears out on the top of the Hokage monument. No, I'm too late. Kushina, my darling granddaughter, it appears I have failed you. His attention is grabbed by angry noises coming from the village. Wanting more information, he follows the sounds. Sarutobi Hiruzen looked out over the now angry crowd, villagers demanding the death of Naruto Uzumaki. What am I going to do now? He thought to himself. He made his way back into his office with the small baby in his hands. As he came inside, a flash filled his office. And when the light died down, a familiar face stood frowning at him. The man was surrounded by several Ambu agents with their weapons drawn. Stand down. If he wanted me dead, I would already be in my grave, Sarutobi said with a sigh. The men immediately withdrew their weapons and stood away from the two. The man lifted his hand. Time suspension, he said quietly, and everyone but Sarutobi and all but two of the Ambu, Kakashi and Yamato, were frozen in time. Thank you, old friend, I've stopped time so we can speak to one another. Now, as to why I am presently present, you probably already know this. But you have something that desire, said the pink-haired man in the strange clothes. The third looked him over before looking at the baby Naruto in his arms. That's right, I've come for child. I would appreciate it if you'd not keep me from my great-grandson, the man said, holding out his hand. I assume you mean to teach him in the ways of a mage, Eiji Uzumaki, Hiruzen said as he did his way over to the man handing him the child. Yes, but I intend on enrolling him in the academy when turns 6, so I expect you to have the Namikaze estate in order for him to inherit, because he will be entering under his father's name. Just lie to those stupid villagers that the fourth had twin sons by Kushina, and that the one that has the fox in him has died from a weak body, and the other was sent away into hiding. Here, I'll even help you out with that. He raises his hand. Wide-range memory augment. Now everyone in the village who was under the effects of my time suspension spell, the whole village, is under the impression that there were 2 children. Oh, and on that note, I'm renaming this child for his safety. His new name is Ryuhiko Uzumaki Namikaze. I expect everything to be in order for my apprentice when we return, so until next we meet, farewell. And with a flash the man was gone and time was unfrozen. Sir, may I ask who that was? Asked an Ambu wearing a dog mask that had remained in the room. That was exactly who he said he was. Grandfather to Kushina and great-grandfather to the Ryuhiko Uzumaki Namikaze. He is now in the safest hands, and will grow up happy. But I doubt he'll grow up normal. In another world, at the foot of the Crystal Tower on the Isle of Arcanum, Eiji Uzumaki appeared with his great-grandson in his hands. Well kid, here W.E. are your new home for the next 6 years, he said, rubbing the baby's cheeks. The baby let out a small cue as the whisker marks began to fade due to the spell. Now all I have to do is awaken your mana network so that I can train you. For the next 3 years Eiji cared for his great-grandchild and took the role of his surrogate father. After he turned 3, Eiji began to teach the child reading, writing and the beginnings of magic. And at 4 started to instruct him in jujutsu and aikido as well as batojutsu. It quickly became apparent that there wasn't anything that Ryuhiko could not learn and master. And after the boy turned 5 he was ready for training in higher magic. Eiji took him with him to other worlds to have him learn under different masters, and no matter where they went, Masahiko Naruto outperformed all the other students, and eventually Naruto's Rinnegan, which was activated by Eiji along with his mana network, awakened. As his 6th birthday approached, Eiji felt it was time to sit him down and explain his role in his home world. Ryuhiko, Eiji said, smiling his whimsical grin at his son. Yes, Ada, Naruto's favorite word for father. What is it? I believe I've already told you this. But we will soon be returning to the world of your birth for you to face your destiny. We will be staying at the Namikaze estate. I will still be teaching you after school, and if you make any friends, feel free to invite them over. Also, remember your lessons on diplomacy and manipulation of others. You will need to have as many allies and followers as possible to succeed. So I expect you to sharpen your wit and. Naruto finished rolling his eyes. Dip my tongue in silver. Alright Ada, okay. Cheeky kit, Eiji said ruffling his star pupil's hair. Hey, only Kurama-sensei can call me that. Whatever fishcake, Eiji said retracting his hand. What? I am not a. Ryuhiko began stomping around as a thunderhead began to form overhead in the sky. Chill kid, you're going to cause a cloud burst if you don't control yourself. Eiji warned. Hey, psych, you thought I was actually angry. He ha 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 ha. Young blonde said as he started to laugh as the storm faded. Eiji's sweat dropped at the trick. Okay, I'm impressed you actually made me think you were truly angry. Just remember that as the head of your clan you were expect. Again Ryuhiko finished for him again. Ed.T.O. behave with the dignity that befits one of such rank. Ryu looked up at his surrogate father who now had his arms crossed. Would you please stop finishing my sentences? Sorry Ada. Ryu said. LSO I've asked Lady Natsumi to come with us to keep watch over you. This got his attention. Natsumi Haim is coming too. He asked slightly excited. Yes, but she's told you that she's not a princess and not to call her that. So please refrain from it. Eiji warned his charge. Yes sir. Ryu replied slightly put out. He always liked to call Lady Natsumi Haim, because to him the kimono wearin' G assassin was one of the most beautiful women he'd ever met. Well then, you better get some shut-eye. Tomorrow we'll be going over everything you've learned this past year, and then we will start packing to return to the village. 2 days later at the entrance of Konohagakure, Sarutobi Hiruzen along with a squad of Ambu stood near the entrance of the front gate to greet the Namikaze clan head and his guardians who were arriving today. A letter had appeared on his desk 3 days ago saying they would be arriving today. Suddenly the wind picked up and the sky grew dark. A spell circle appeared on the ground in front of them. It was something that everyone had expected, however Hiruzen was concerned because he knew what Eiji's spell circle looked like and this was not his. After a moment his circle glowed bright gold and 3 figures materialized in front of the welcoming party, after which the sky cleared and circle vanished. There stood Eiji in his strange clothes, Ryuhiko wearing black shorts, light blue muscle shirt over which he wore a light yellow haori with red and orange silk painted clouds with the Uzumaki symbol on each of the sleeves and one on the back side inside a sun, and a beautiful woman with porcelain skin, crimson lips, jet black hair, and emerald green eyes wearing a long red yukata kimono decorated with rainbow-colored butterfly embroidery tied with a black and gold obi. You continue to impress me with your mastery of magic, Ryu. It's hard enough for many mages to transport even one person across the dimensional planes, but you did 3 people. Eiji said, praising the 6-year-old boy. Said child smiled lazily, scratching the back of his head, then replied, Thanks Ada, but now I think I will black out for a while. And with that the boy began collapse. Say the woman who felt his pulse and smiled up at Eiji. It appears that he wore himself out doing that. She said. So it would seem. Eiji said, shaking his head. Ryu wasn't out too long. He soon awoke to find himself resting on a couch in the third's office. He saw his father standing beside an old-looking guy with a red and white hat on that he recognized as the Hokage, not Santa. He'd met the man going over paperwork. Said person noticed Ryu's wakefulness and smiled. I see you're awake. Thank goodness. I didn't know how much longer I could keep the council from coming in and waking you up. They are a bit eager to meet you. Ryu smirked. More like they're eager to see their new pet, but if they think that I am some puppet to have my strings pulled from the shadows, they're in for a rude awakening. The 6-year-old said, crossing his arms over his chest. Hiruzen lifted an eyebrow. Well then, I guess I don't have to worry about them taking advantage of you. That's good. I guess it's time you met them. And you're right not to trust them. I know I don't. He turned to Eiji. Shall we then? Eiji nodded. I suppose we have to. Well then, time to meet the clown brigade, he said with a sigh. Hiruzen chuckled to himself. The 3 made their way to the council room where the civilian council waited with the rest of the clan heads. Once in the room, everyone looked over at Ryu. He looked around the room and raised his hand in greeting. Hiya, he said with a fox-like smile. As he looked around the room, his eyes fell on the only other child in the room. He had black hair and dark eyes and a sullen look on his face. "Hey, Ada, Hokage-sama, who is that?" he said, pointing at the boy. "That is Sasuke Uchiha, the only survivor of the Uchiha massacre other than the older brother who committed it." Hiruzen answered. "It was your honored mother's hope that her unborn children, you and your dead brother, would become friends with him," Eiji said, filling him in on his late mother's wishes. "Okay," he replied with a smile. With that, Ryu made his way over to the young man who watched the other approach him. "Nice to meet you, Sasuke," he said, extending his hand for a handshake. Sasuke simply looked at the extended hand like it was something foreign. "It's called a hand. You're supposed to shake it," Naruto said, speaking like he was trying to explain the concept to an idiot. A few in the room snickered at this. "HN," Sasuke replied, looking at him arrogantly. Ryu grimaced. "Fine then, be that way. I didn't really want to touch your filthy hands anyway. I'm sure you'll ge. Plenty of friends what with such a foul disposition and the manners of a savage," Ryu replied causally, glancing away with a smirk on his face as the Uchiha glared daggers at him. "You're just the fussy type, one suppose," he said, walking to his seat by his father, getting a small number of chuckles from some of the other clan heads as they noticed the other boy shake with rage. The remainder of the meeting consisted of the Hokage introducing Ryuhiko and his adoptive father, Teacher Eiji, and reading out a list of Ryu's powers and his multi-elemental affinity nature. When it was mentioned that he had the Rinnegan, most didn't believe him and he was asked to demonstrate, to which he obliged happily. The room was quiet until Danzo spoke. "I vote we implement the CRA for this young boy and Councilman Danzo. I would stop talking right now if I were you. I would hate to witness an untimely death on my first day back here," Ryu said with warning in his young voice while smiling broadly at the bandaged man. Danzo just ignored him and was about to continue when he clutched his head and began to scream out in pain and fell to the floor, writhing before his body went still. Everyone looked over at where Ryu was standing with his Rinnegan active. He let out a sigh and deactivated it. "Don't worry, I just put him in a week-long coma. I trust everyone else will refrain from making more foolish suggestions that could cause them to meet with a most horrific death," he said with a small smile, exposing his large canines. There was a small murmur as everyone regarded him with more caution. Sasuke looked at him with both envy and awe in his eyes. He would make a better ally than an enemy, he thought. As for replicating the Rinnegan through offspring, that can only be done by marrying someone with another Dujutsu ability. Hyuga Hiyashi was cheering inside his head because he had his daughter, while Sasuke was cursing the fact that the other boy wasn't the opposite gender. Ryu was reading the mind of the two and sweat dropped, but just continued. "I am open to the idea of multiple marriages as it was already part of my parents' will, but I will only marry someone if I fall in love." End of discussion. I am not some rare species of dog or cat to be used in some inane breeding program. He finished and took a seat. As the meeting came to a close, Sasuke came up and held out his hand to Ryu, who regarded it for a moment before replying. Out of exception I offered you my friendship freely and you chose to turn it aside. Now you will have to earn it like everyone else. Hopefully you will learn that the friendship of Ryuhiko Uzumaki Namikaze is not easily turned aside. One good turn deserves another, Sasuke. Prove that you are worthy of my trust and I will return that trust and help you in avenging your family." Sasuke's eyes went wide in surprise. How did he know? He thought to himself. Ryu smiled at the reaction. "I know each and every thought in your mind, Sasuke Uchiha. My mind can hear every thought in this room." Turns to Hisahi, who was listening nearby. "And I would be delighted to visit you, Hyuga Hiyashi, for dinner and meet your daughter, as long as the invitation you were going to extend is also extended to my surrogate father and his female friend that I'm hoping he will ask to marry him," Ryu said with a smile as he watched his Ada turn scarlet in embarrassment. "Ryuu," Eiji said, overcoming his embarrassment and sending a warning growl to his charge. "Sorry, Ada," Ryu said as his shoulders tensed. "I'll be expecting you, young man," said Hiyashi with a slight smile. Eiji came up to his son. "Come on, we need to get to the Namikaze compound and get you ready then," he said with a sigh as they left. The young Uchiha and the Lieutenant Hyuga watched as the newest, most desirable ally, left with his father. "Ha, take that, you Uchiha brat," Hyuga Hiyashi thought secretly to himself in his head. Damn you Hyuga, Sasuke thought as he looked at the older clan head. Ryu got ready for the day. He was used to lying in bed for about an hour before actually getting up. Unfortunately, now he had to attend the academy in this world. So it had to be shortened to about 10 minutes. Last night was fun. That Hyuga heiress was quite cute, though a bit shy, but I prefer that to some evil legion of fangirls. He thought to himself. This had been a problem for Ryu ever since he'd arrived. Some idiot had blabbed about the young male heir to the Uzumaki clan, and now he had to sneak past either women who were trying to set I am up with their daughters or girls who lived close enough to the compound to be standing near the entrance when he tried to exit it. Thankfully, when the compound was being rebuilt from after the By attack, Eiji had sent some plans to the Hokage of all the different things that Ryu had liked in the worlds they had visited. When on vacation, which included an iron front gate closing it off the compound to the public. The compound buildings all had an French chateau castle style exterior with Rococo style interiors. Needless to say, it was quite a sight to see. So as one might imagine, Ryu was currently resting on a king-sized bed with all sorts of pillows, staring at the heaven scenes on the ceiling, debating in his head what he should wear for his first day. Ryu stretched and yawned as he went over to the full-body mirror that hung against the wall and snapped his fingers at the reflection, causing his night cloths to vanish. He let out a bored yawn, feigning himself in a brown t-shirt, gray shorts, and a blue hoodie with orange and dark blue checkered pattern at the edges and borders of the cuffs and on the edge of the hood. After this, he looked at his messed up hair and decided it needed cleaning, drying, and styling. He snapped both fingers and pointed to his hair, instantly cleaning and drying it at once before thinking how best to style it. You're getting lazy, young man. I know that magic makes things easier, but you should try to do things on your own, said Eiji, leaning against the door frame, arms crossed. Ada, I use magic to clean my hair because shampoo can be damaging as can certain types of water. And drying it with magic instead of a towel cuts down on laundry. Ryu returned with a fox-like grin. Alright, whatever, just be at school on time, alright, Eiji said, walking away from the door and down the hall. Which style? Ah, I know. Ryu snapped once more and his hair took on an asymmetrical style, Roxas's hair off Kingdom Hearts 2. Perfect. At the academy, Hinata sat in class waiting for Ryu to come in. She had met him last night when her father had invited him over for dinner and she was smitten. He knew everything, was friendly, and could tell the most wonderful stories. He had even asked her to dance with him as he demonstrated a variation of the waltz that he said he'd picked up in one of the 9 kingdoms and had easily taught her. Who did he say I looked like again? Some queen called Snow White. She blushed at the comparison to the famous queen who was apparently so beautiful that even death refused to claim her prematurely. Oh Ryu, Sasuke, Ino and Sakura cried simultaneously while standing next to the boy's desk. Oh brother, I hope they don't get in my way, Hinata thought, rolling her eyes at the two fangirls. Sasuke looked at the two of them and actually spoke. I'm surprised you two aren't outside the new clan head's house trying to get a peek at him, he said, then went back to staring off into space. Who's he talking about? Ino thought out loud. He's talking about Ryuhiko Uzumaki Namikaze, the son of the 4th Hokage and heir to the Uzumaki clan. Shikamaru replied in a bored voice. Hey Aneda, didn't he visit your clan's compound last night? He asked. That's right, my father asked him to come over for dinner. He's really smart and kind and well-traveled due to his bloodline ability. Sasuke head lift up Kurio's now. What bloodline ability? Oh, well, why you see, he explained to my father last night that it's very rare but occasionally an Uzumaki will be born with an inactive or active mana network. Mana is what we might consider magic, as it allows for the use of almost any type of power to be used by tapping into what he explained to be the building code of the universe, and because of this he can actually travel to different realities and different dimensional planes of existence, such as the world of the 9 kingdoms or Evil East too. He said he'd like to take me ing with some friends to one of them when we graduate. Hinata finished to see Sakura and Ino standing over her. Oh, Sue, what's he like? Ino started. What other things can you tell us? Sakura continued. Does he have a girlfriend? Does he hate dumb blondes? Or pink pigs? You're the pig. Hinata tried to defuse it before it got out of hand. I know he likes ramen and sweets, so I made him this apple pie. Hinata said, getting out an apple pie. Great, you can say I helped. Sakura said, snatching for the pie. Sakura, she made that. Give it back to her. Ino said, snatching the pie from Sakura. A fight soon ensued, and soon the pie went flying across the room, landing in the face Ryu, who was just entering the room. Sakura, Ino. Oh no. I'm so sorry, Ryu. Hinata managed to get out. Ryu licked the filling on his face and smiled. It's fine, Hinata. I love apple pie, he said, then snapped his fingers, completely cleaning himself up while making the pie appear completely reus. MB led in his hand with steam rising of it. I just don't like wearing it, he said with a smile. Everyone was ogling the causal use of magic. Now I think I'll sit here, Ryu said, pointing to the FREE seat next to Sasuke, then placed the pie on the desk. Thanks for the pie, Hinata, Ryu said, giving her a peck on the cheek. She went completely crimson and fainted. Ryu simply smiled at her happy conscious face and went back over to his seat. Hey Sasuke, would you like some pie? Ryu said playfully. Sasuke glared him. Sorry, I forgot you don't like sweets, huh Sas2. Stop doing that, Sasuke growled. Ryu ignored him and pointed to the sullen emo while addressing the girls. Sasuke's favorite food is. Sasuke decided to tackle him, only for Ryu to use substitution on the both of THM, causing Sasuke to fall into the outside aisle. Is tomatoes. At that moment Iruka came in to start the class and noticed Sasuke on the floor with spiral dizzy eyes. Mr. Uchiha, would you please find your seat so we can begin class? Iruka said, stepping over the young Uchiha on the floor. Ever since Ryu had arrived in the village, he had come to understand 4 very interesting facts. 1. He was popular. 2. The people here were worth getting to know, and worth befriending. 3. Some of the adults were idiots. 4. His real father had made plenty of enemies in other villages. The final fact he was the most happy about. Why? Well, let's just say that now he had plenty of people for him to practice dark magic on. Yes, dark magic, as in torture magic, destruction magic, and of course his favorite, necromancy. Yes, the 6-year-old sorcerer rank 1 magic user was skilled in necromancy. No, he was not evil. After all, these people had tried to kill him. They had tried to either break into the estate grounds only to be transported to a private detention cell in a pocket reality that had been designed for holding prisoners, or as Ryu liked to think of them, my sad and unhappy toys. This had led to Eiji calling the pocket dimension Ryu's dark toy box of nightmares. Yes, the surrogate father knew what his sweet son was practicing, and he wholly approved. After all, what sort of father doesn't support a healthy curiosity? Ryu loved to torture these assassins to death in all sorts of cruel and usual ways. As for the spies from Danzo, they had been teleported to his office, all tied up in pink ribbon with a mocking sign pasted on their foreheads. This was applied to only those who wished to spy on the compound and the boy, but for everyone else who had been sent to kill Ryu. They had gained a one-way ticket to a never-ending hell on Earth. This brings us to Ryu's most recently acquired toy, a young 18-year-old who seemed to be devoid of emotion from the sound. Said boy had claimed to be devoid of emotion when Ryu first spoke with him in his cell. You have emotions, number 421, it's impossible for people to live without them. I'd wager that yours are only sealed away, Ryu explained to his toy. You are wrong, number 421 replied. Ryu raised a single graceful golden eyebrow. Oh, am I? By the way, did you know that time does not exist in this world we are in? The reason is because it is one of my many training rooms for magic. I can be in here a year and not age a day, and when I return to the world outside only a second will have even gone by. Should I care? Number 421 asked. Ryu smiled evilly. Yes, you should also worry. 36 hours later. Ha 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 SSS stop. Ha ha I see can't ha ha ha. Can't what? Breathe. I wouldn't worry if I were you. The human body can only take so much laughter before one dies of it and your time's almost up. Ha 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 nn ha ha hen chn. Cough cough cough. Number 421 was now ha. seeking up blood before finally doubling over and collapsing in the puddle of red on the floor. Finally, Ryu said as he got up from his chair where he had been sitting casting the spell while he stretched. Ed popping his neck loosening the tension. Now I'll just clean this up, patch up his insides with a spell, Ryu said with a flick blood disappeared. Now, time to bring him back. Number 421 now pale Ba. Reframe was stretched out on a white marble stone slab after a while his brown lashes turned white and started to flicker his eyes opened to reveal two bright scared violet eyes as he sat up gasping at the cold air. Ah, you're up. Welcome back number 421, or as I've decided to rename you, Ketsuka. Said Ryu smiling. Who are you? Ketsuka asked. Your creator. It was actually my first time creating a vampire from a dead human. But you've turned out rather nicely. I've created tons of zombies before but never a vamp. I also used your age to that 14-year-old so that you'd be able to cope. I guess the age reduction thing is what I needed to begin with all those times before. Ryu thought back to all the other failed experiments at necrobinding a departed soul back to the original body. Well, at least it worked and you're up and about, Ryu said with a kind smile, and then grimaced at the bareness of his new, big brother. That's right, big brother. Why? Because he always won. Ted won and this was just the coolest way to get one. Could you put those clothes in that chair on? You were more than a little distracting without them. Okay. The name's Ryuhiko, which means Dragon Prince. But you can call me Ryu for short. Ryu said, filling him in as he watched the newborn get up and make his way over to the cloths and put them on. He had laid out a cream-colored muscle shirt and a light blue and gray hoodie jacket and a pair of dark gray jeans with black shoes for him. Once he was dressed, Ryu spoke again. Well, I better get you registered as a citizen. It's a good thing I changed most of your features. Now come with me. Oh, before I forget, here, take these. Ryu said, handing him small pill container. What are they? Ketsuka asked, perplexed. Life energy pills. If you start feeling drained or hungry for blood, take one of those. It'll keep you from gorging yourself on the villagers' blood. Remember, you're not human anymore, and though you can still enjoy the taste of human food, it doesn't have the stuff you need to survive in it. Understand? Ryu asked his new, baby, big brother figure. I think I get it. Ketsuka replied. Good, now we can go to the Hokage's office. Ryu said happily as he teleported the two away there to the Hokage's building. They appeared at the room outside the Hokage's office. Now don't say anything about what you are. In fact, don't say anything at all. Just let me do all the talking while you stand there silently and smile. Got it, Ketsuka said with an enormous shit-eating grin on his face. Ryu just raised an eyebrow at the newborn's antics. Well, here we go. It was about a half an hour later Ryu exited the building and with his hands folded behind his head smiling with his new big brother Ketsuka beside him with a smile on his face as well. However, it wasn't long before they were being pursued by a crowd of fangirls both Ryu and Ketsuka's age, and in mere moments they had picked up speed and were actually running before they ran into an abandoned alley. They hid behind some dumpsters before Ryu backed up against someone. He turned to see Sasuke staring at him. Sakuk, what are you doing here? Same as you, Ryu. Hiding from deranged women who want to arrange my future with their daughters and flighty girls that want to hang on me. Who's that? This is my adopted bro Ketsuka Uzumaki. He only took my second name since I'm the clan head. Well, I guess he explains why there are more of those girls out there. How are we going to escape? Asked Sasuke. I could teleport us to my place since I don't know where you live yet. Ryu was actually lying. He knew where the Uchiha lived. He just didn't want to go to his compound. It had a depressing air about it, and he wanted to show off his compound. Because try as he might, he was still very childish and wanted craved attention, plus it might be fun to have someone else around. Okay, I assume you're using magic, right? He asked. Yep, I hope you don't have a weak stomach. Why? The next thing Sasuke saw was a flash of multicolored lights followed by the feeling of lightheadedness and rapid spinning. Bamf. Because teleporting tends to unsettle those who aren't used to it, Ryu said as he watched Sasuke turn pale green from the teleportation. What do you lot mean you've never heard of Christmas? Ryu yelled at his classmates. He was wearing a bright red hoary jacket with gold embroidered into with black and gold cargo pants. Just that we've never heard of it. Why should we have? Shikamaru answered. Ryu was deathly silent. Ryu? Sasuke asked, worried about his only equal and best friend. He glared over at the Nara because it looked as if Shikamaru's answer had ripped his soul from his body. Great job, Shikamaru Baka. You broke his brain, Sakura and Ino said, whopping the Nara over the head with their fists. Tears started to flow down Ryu's face. You poor people. No wonder there are so many wars. No wonder our world is classified as a level SSS danger zone to all dimension travelers. No wonder the Grand Mage Council looks down on our world. Well, this has to be fixed. And it has to be fixed now. Come on, all of you. School is out for the day on account of a snowstorm. Ryu declared as he made for the window before jumping out it. Iruka came in to see his students filing out of the class. Where are you all going? Come back. Naruto said school was out due to the snowstorm. Said Ino. She was happy at the possibility of seeing snow for the first time. What? It doesn't snow. Before he could finish the sentence, a blast of cold air came through the open window. He ran to close it as the temperature of the room began to plummet, only to stop and stare at the floating form of Naruto brandishing a crystal staff with the symbol of a 8-winged female being at the top of it. Swirling around him were dozens of large flakes of white. The teacher looked at the ground and saw it was already completely covered. And despite the other instructor's best efforts, students were running outside to play in it. Ryu Namikaze, he's a miracle worker. The teacher thought to himself. At the Hokage's tower. Report. What is causing this weather? Hiruzen Sarutobi demanded of the Anbu in front of him. It isn't an invasion, is it? It appears that the weather is the result of one Ryu Namikaze. What did you all think he would do when he heard that no one in this world has ever heard of Christmas? Aji said as he appeared in the office. Aji, I've heard you speak of this Christmas before. Could you explain it to me? Certainly, Hokage-sama. Christmas, you see, is a holiday that celebrates the virtues of joy, hope, family and peace. It also happens to be Ryu's most favorite holiday. On Christmas, people give each other gifts, and those who normally fight try to make a temporary peace with each other despite any feuds they may have. Loved ones gather together to sing, play games and enjoy each other's company. It gave rise to Ryu's saying, "The fire of hope burns brightest in the winter's night." Why, just look outside. He appears to be growing a giant blue SPRUCE out of the ground in the center of town to decorate. Before the night is over, he'll probably have invited every person in the village to the estate for our Christmas party. Eiji said cheerfully. So, should we bring presents? Hiruzen asked. No, he has probably asked Nicholas Street North, the spirit of wonder, to come to our world and Kohana to bring gifts to all the families here. At the Uzumaki estate. Wow, this is beautiful, Ryu, exclaimed Ino as she looked around the ballroom as decorations were hanging themselves up due to Ryu's enchantments. All of his class had been taken in horse-drawn sleighs to the estate and everyone was in the ballroom waiting for their parents to arrive along with the rest of the village. Thank you, Ino. Now if you will all follow me and Hinata, we will demonstrate how to do the dance for tonight. The Waltz for the Moon begins to play in a few moments. Everyone started to try, almost as if compelled to do so. Ino had grabbed Shikamaru without King with him only muttering, troublesome, but dancing nonetheless. It was then that Ryu noticed that Sasuke was trying to sneak out and Sakura was looking around for a dance partner. Ryu knew he may not regret this later, but fired a super confidence spell at her when she spotted Sasuke. The scene that followed was humorous to say the least. She walked over to him smiling not in her usual fangirl way and grabbed his hand and pulled him out to the dance floor. At first he tried to dance, but messed up, but she didn't give up. She pulled him back out to the dance floor and whispered, tell me the great Uchiha is defeated by a dance." As the music picked up, he and Sakura span twirled and shot each other their most confident looks. As the music ended, they heard clapping and whistling and looked around to see their classmates cheering them, even Ino, who seemed to be leaning happily on the lazy smirking Nara. It was then that everyone noticed that their clothes had changed to that of semi-formal attire. They all looked at their host, who was smiling while holding a box of ornaments. So, Who wants to help decorate the tree? Ryu asked. The party was a blast in everyone's opinion. The young Namikaze and his adoptive relative Eiji were perfect hosts. Everyone was having the best time in the world, and it was almost as if time stood still and perfect peace had descended upon their world in the form of the young blonde. His smile lit up the room, putting everyone at ease, and he seemed to emit an aura of pure serenity and hope. The only person who was upset was a certain war hawk whom, despite his best efforts, could find nothing of value in the estate. Danzo was extremely surprised that he was personally invited to the elaborate estate party. But his silent rejoicing was cut short when he realized the power that this family had. He knew that he was looking in the right places for information, but for some irritating reason the more he tried to concentrate on what should be in right front of him, the more things became unclear and vague, almost like when some people try to read random books in a dream only for the nothing to make sense or the dream becomes foggy. At first he thought it was genjutsu and tried to dispel it, but it wasn't. That's when Eiji had found him. Eiji smiled at him peacefully, and quickly explained that he was not mad or surprised at Dazo's actions. They were to be expected of the man after all. But he also said that it was an exercise in futility. For it was his charge that was the one who designed the reality-bending spell around the compounds, and that meant that any perceived threat would be hindered or eliminated, depending on the intentions of said threat. He went on to tell Danzo that Ryu's power was at a level far above his own, and that for his charge, reality itself was a child's plaything to the boy, and that the Warhawk should be happy that Ryu was even on the village's side because he quite literally had enough power to snuff out the sun itself. Needless to say, Danzo quickly left the house a very rattled old man, with newfound respect and fear of the young boy. After all, it isn't every day that a benevolent being with almost godlike powers decides not to destroy you and everything you hold dear for trying to insult its intelligence, which according to Eiji was exactly what Danzo had been doing to Ryu since he entered the house. Meanwhile, in another room of the house, in a hall of mirrors that Neji had been lured away from the party by Hinata to, the room the young man found himself enraptured by his own reflection. Why had he followed her? Because he was charged with guarding her. However, he had no way of knowing the present she'd arranged for him tonight. Neji entered the room on Lee to find it was an empty room of miroirs. That was when he turned around about to leave, only to spy a reflection of Ryu standing beside him in one of the reflections. Stay a moment, won't you? Nay. Iji froze in his tracks, enraptured by Ryu's mesmerizing voice. Tell me, why do you hate Hinata? Ryu asked. I don't. I'm just jealous because of her being from the main house and you from the main branch. It was not a question, it was a statement, Ryu replied with. Yes, answered Neji. She loves you and wants you to have freedom, Neji. Ryu continued while passing around the older boy. Quote, question mark, exclamation mark, quote. What was happening to him? Yes, but to accomplish the complete liberation of the rest of the branch family she needs support. To this end she gives you your freedom. Ryu said, handing a shining object to Neji, who found himself taking said object from the blonde boy's hands. She can't, Neji said dejectedly. But I can, Ryu said, a slight smile appearing on the face of the boy in the mirror beside him. Remove your headband and see that the caged bird seal is no longer there, spoke the blonde in the reflection. Neji did so, not even questioning, his eyes slowly widening and T.R.S. beginning to form in them as the seal that bound him to the main house was revealed to no longer be there on his forehead. How? Asked a tear-filled voice. Because to me all impossibilities are NDERED is vapor to be brushed away with a wave of my hand. As for why, well, because Hinata loves you. Know also that none can ever reapply the seal. Now, and that I have placed a powerful disillusionment and spell on you so that none will question the seal's absences. At that moment the figure of Hinata came to stand beside the Namikaze heir as he slowly turned to see them smiling at him. Neji began to cry. For Ryu, the ability to use shadow clones while using time-space magic to be in many places at once was fun. He was using the clones in ways now that normally weren't possible, and while he kept some guests unaware that he was granting the dearest wishes to many of his friends. Tonight many would find that for Ryu there was no such thing as no such thing, like one Sasuke Uchiha. Sasuke, He had been pulled away from Sakura, whom for once he was enjoying the company of, by Naruto, who replaced him with a hanged shadow clone designed to look like Sasuke, and when it was dipiled the informat, Ion would go to him and not Naruto to save them from further complications. He was currently led to a beautiful room that appeared to be a private suite. Sasuke, tonight I will return something you've lost to you at a price. The price is that the thing lost cannot leave the Namikaze compound until we have avenged you clan. But as I've told you before, I believe thee that your brother's hand was forced by another to commit his sins. Now, I will return that which you have so dearly needed and missed. A mother's touch. Sasuke's eyes went wide as female figure came through the mist inside the mirror that Ryu had pulled the cover off of. He could only say one word as his eyes watered in joy. Mom. Sasuke made his way to the Namikaze compound under the henge of a random civilian and quickly made his way through the barrier. He had been training alongside Ryu and the rest of the clan heirs and a few people that had got Ryu's attention. Ryu's uncle Eiji, as it turned out, was also well trained as a ninja before being trained as a mage. However, he kept that secret so he could teach his nephew magic. However, when he revealed he'd be happy to instruct the kids on the more practical points of the shinobi lifestyle, many of them agreed to the idea. Lately, however, Ryu had gotten really sick from his own magic and it had been erupting out of him. This was because his chakra coils and mana line had interacted with each other and begun to widen and intermingle till there was hardly a difference between them. In other words, Ryu was becoming a living magical being comprised of pure energy. Eiji said that this sometimes happens to really powerful mages. However, the bad part about it happening so young was that it would stunt Ryu's growth, both physical and magical, once the process was complete. In other words, Ryu would stop aging altogether. This magical sealing tattoos were applied to Ryu's body as well as magical bracers, which were a type of restraint. This did not make Ryu PPY, as he could no longer cast really powerful spells. In fact, it made him a lot more childish and a lot less serious as well. I hate these damn restraints, Ryu declared loudly as Sasuke entered the main foyer of the mansion. Oh come on Ryu, this is a good thing, cuz now you can focus on your ninja training, Kiba said as he shifted out of his wolf form. One of the presents Ryu gave Kiba for Christmas was a complex magical seal that allowed Kiba to shift into the form of a white dire wolf, which also allowed him to talk with nin dogs with his mind. Right now he was the size of a Siberian husky, but that would change real soon. One of the cool things they all discover was that it allowed Kiba to teach Akamaru human speech. So far all he could say were a few sentences in human, but it was still cool. Yeah, whatever. But seriously, I can't stand them, but Ada says it's for the best. Speaking of your uncle, where is he? Asked Sakura as she looked up from reading her book, The Taming of the Dark Lion, A Tale of the Sorceresses, Night by Renoa Hartley. 1. She had become a lot more confident since Christmas when she got the book from Ryu, and had been told by Eiji that in the city-state of Lemuria that women with high foreheads were sought after by men of the nobility, as it was a sign of intelligence and wisdom. Such women were often asked to be advisors to Lemurian princes and were even engaged to them. This had made Sakura less self-conscious about her head, and when he told her that it was more ladylike to use a quiet voice, she began speaking in a softer tone. Oh, he said he had something to tell Gigi. Ryu replied. Gigi? Asked Hinata. A pet name for the Hokage, offered Sasuke. Oh. In the council room in the Hokage Tower. UHG, this is not good. Sarutobi, Eiji said as he paced about the council chambers. The civilian council watched him nervously, and much more important, silently. After all, they were truly terrified of the pink-haired mage. After one meeting with them, he had told them in these specific words, I hate all of you, and if it were legally doable I would kill you all slowly, then bring you back to life, and do it again. The scariest part was they weren't completely unsure that he could not do as such, so they kept as quiet as possible. What is it that has you so worried, Eiji? I'm afraid of Magnus manifesting. Danzo spoke up here. What exactly is Magnus? Eiji glared at Danzo for speaking without being spoken to, but answered anyway, a god, to be precise, the god of magic, also known as the eye in the sky, by some. Why would this Magnus manifest? Hiruzen asked cautiously. Ryu may be chosen as his avatar and champion. I'm sorry, but I feel I should explain this. You see, Magnus has been known to choose a mag. He favors every few centuries to bless with his immense power. The closest thing you lot world have is a Jinchuriki, only instead of being a container for a demon, Ryu would be a doorway for a god's power. The room went silent and still before the third spoke. Would Ryu be influenced in any way by this Magnus? No, Magnus is a completely neutral entity. The only way he has ever shown any partially tied to an alignment was through his other avatars. Other avatars? There are more than one at a time? Homura inquired. Now, normally any other member of the council would have been glared at or leveled with the harsh words. However, Eiji gave grudging respect to Homura and Kaharu, not because of their age. Oh no, he was still older than them and they all knew it. Instead, it was because they actually trusted him more than Danzo. In fact, when Sarutobi asked if Eiji would like to take his place as Hokage so he could retire, they both supported this decision, but Eiji simply laughed at them and saw it the only way he'd ever wear that hat was to keep Danzo far from it. As such, they had approved Eiji becoming an advisor as well. Actually, yes. You see, all mages who are powerful enough to become immortal upon reaching their age of majority, like myself, are the ones that Magnus chooses as his avatars. The reason why there are so few is because there is actually a set amount, and when one decides to retire to the afterlife, a vacancy is left. Currently there are 3 vacancies, and I believe Ryu will be filling one because he is exhibiting all the signs. I take it you have a plan? Kaharu asked. Yes. With the Hokage's permission, I'd like to petition to be a stand-in or even sub-jonin instructor for Ryu's team when they get one. If I may make a suggestion, pair him with the Sasuke Uchiha and Hinata Hyuga, as they have both shown an interest in the arcane arts. I thought that you had to be born with magic, Sarutobi interjected. Eiji shook his head and smiled wryly. That is a common misconception. Anyone is capable of a very small degree of magic. To be able to fully use it, it must be awoken though, and only a few dimensional mages can do this, myself included. In fact, Vei is the oldest magic in existence, with music and secret names coming in a close second. You see, it was love that inspired the creator to begin the creation of the universes, and it was accomplished through divine words and song. I can understand the reasons for Hyuga Hinata, but do you really think it wise to teach Sasuke? Hiruzen began. He is no longer on the path of vengeance since he and my ward befriended each other. Actually, he's a lot different now, Eiji commented, grinning to himself at his charge's work on the Uchiha. The third also smiled at this news. It was indeed a welcome change. I will see what I can do. I am going to take a guess and say that you've already begun their lessons. Quote, naturally, and I'm sure you can see my reasoning for the suggestion of that team as well. Eiji asked. Yes, I see the connection. A powerful dojutsu team, very clever, Eiji. Hiruzen said, a small smirk appearing on his lips. Well, that is one topic down, but now there are a few other NGS I'd like to discuss, one of them being the inheritance of the Uzumaki clan, if I am not mistaken, and I seldom the entirety of Uzu Shiogakure's wealth as well as the deeds to the land of Uzu Shiogakure now belong to my great-grandson. So, Eiji and the Hokage glared at the merchant heads of the civilian council who were now sweating bullets. Where is it? He growled. You lot had better see up with an answer, or I will unleash Anko-chan on you lot. And my great-grandson gave her a book on torture called 1000 Ways to Make Your Foes Spill Their Guts, literally and figuratively, written by Bellatrix Lestrange, who wrote it after her death. How? Hiruzen began. I'm good friends with Lord Hades and his son Nico, Eiji supplied. He turned back to the council, who'd gone very pale. Well, quote, I mean, lessons, begin. I do not own Naruto. Hinata moved away from the academy at a hurried pace, her older cousin Neji right beside her, guarding her and watching every other person and or thing's movements. Ever since the secret removal of the seal, he had come to be her protector and teacher and had gained an almost obsessive need to watch after her. It was a little disconcerting. They rounded a corner to see Sasuke heading toward them under the henge of Kiba. That's actually pretty clever, since Kiba is liked a lot less by the female population in the school, thought Neji. Then he smirked. However, it has one very noticeable flaw. Hey Kiba, where's your dog? He said, causing Sasuke's eyes to widen before narrowing. Shish. No one's noticed yet, so don't give it away. The Kiba imposter shouted angrily. He had managed well so far thanks to his self-proclaimed sorcerer's knight, Sakura, running interference by leading all the other fangirls on wild goose chases. When the Pinkett had found out he was going to become a magic user 2 months ago, she decided he needed a protector like in her favorite book. Only instead of the guy guarding the girl, it would be the other way around. Oh, take her secret training with Lady Natsumi, who was in fact Eiji's knight, much more serious. The elaborate crimson kimono she wore turned out to be more than just eye candy. She had over 1 billion weapons sealed inside it, and it was damn near indestructible, being able to survive the most brutal attacks, which also made it a great piece of armor. Anyway, after her declaration, and watching her take her training more seriously, Sasuke agreed to the idea, and gave her the task of misleading his fans, to which she happily agreed. Hinata and Sasuke were both looking forward to training with Eiji this weekend, as he said he would be teaching them a year's worth of stuff within the course of 2 days. The trio approached the invisible barrier that covered the estate. Just as they got the gate, Sakura approached them. The coast is clear, Sasuke. Not a fangirl in sight. She chirped happily. Discluding the one I'm looking at presently. Good work, he replied in a humored voice. The Pinkett had the good nature to blush, before she noticed Kiba approaching in wolf form with a Konru riding piggyback. They all stood at the gates waiting for the rose vines that entwined its bars to recede. It was a known fact of Ryu and Eiji's love of flowers and growing things, which was reflected in the massive rose gardens as well as other bulbed plants such as lilies, irises, tulips, and flowering trees that covered the estate grounds. Sasuke thought back to the past 2 months of learning and self-discovery. He and Hinata had discovered that while Ryu had the ability to use all forms of magic, he was especially gifted in probability, luck-altering chaos magic, mind magic, and nature magic. Within the past 2 months they had been informed on their strengths so well. Hinata would make an excellent white mage and summoner mage, although Eiji had promised to take Sasuke to at least the shrines of Ifrit, Cerberus, and Hades on their next trip off-world. As it turned out, Sasuke would be a wonderful black mage, elemental mage with an amazing grasp of necromagic. However, Sasuke had argued that necromagic sounded evil, but never one to discourage a student from reaching their potential. Eiji had reassured him that there were 2 types. The first one was bringing a body's functions back using black magic to heal it and give it a pseudo life. This would be Sasuke's area of expertise. The second one was called impure soul revival, which actually tore a departed soul from the afterlife and placed it in a dead vessel, either its own or someone else's, and forced it into servitude. This had its advantages and was not entirely looked down upon in battles. It was very morally unsound and left the necromage who did it open to damaging their own soul if done without being guarded or having a good reason first. They had also decided on their weapons as well. Sasuke had loved using his chakrams and flick blades in conjunction with fire magic to the point that I began to question if he was a pyro mage, or Shivers a pyromaniac. He already had Ryu's love of anything explosive to deal with. Ryu's weapons were 2 Egyptian-styled hand sickles with chains on the handles and a big-ass combat scythe. How the kid could wield it he still had no clue. And Hinata favored a Kakara staff, and a long bow which was actually a good fit for her. He was broad of his musings as Hinata tugged at this sleeve to get him to move. The gates were now open and everyone was moving through them as petals fell from the perpetually blooming cherry trees. They were walking through the garden when Sakura let out a large sigh. Man, I love these gardens. They're beautiful, and so peaceful. Yeah, they also smell really good too. It's a relief on my nose after buying in school all day around a bunch of guys that don't have the decency to bathe at home, or even shower after sparing. Kiba remarked with a slight frown on his face, remembering the sensory overload. This caused quite a few people to give the Inuzuka looks of sympathy. That nose of his made it a pain to be around those irritating civilian boys who had no sense of proper hygiene. I know what you mean, man, those kinds of people. And I use the term very loosely here, can be a pain, they offend my senses, said Ryu as he walked through the garden to stand beside the group who were next to a pond filled with water lilies. Hinata noticed he had a small frown on his face. Is something the matter, Ryu-kun? Mizuki. Came the answer. Yeah, what about the sleaze bag? Kiba asked with a growl. The stupid baka had been making his life a living hell this year EVR since he was hired, and he had noticed he started ever so slightly doing the same to Ryu as well. Ryu began to shake with rage while his long bangs covered his eyes. He knows. Everyone present went silent. They also knew what he was speaking about, the truth of who he truly was, what he really was. How? I thought the spell your grandfather cast was over the whole village. Sasuke said, panicking slightly. Remember the masked man I spoke of, Sasuke? He asked, to which he got an affirmative nod. Well, you dear twice curse. D-cousin is the leader of a group known as the Akatsuki, though I hear none of them knows it. The Snake Tem was also a member until recently, and guess who dear Mizuki-chan secretly really works for? The answer came from multiple sources. Orochimaru. Then started snickering because they now knew the reason for the feminine suffix. Hint, Orchi Tem likes boys. And Bingo was his name. Oh. He said, finally getting over his rage. Does the Hokage know? How did you find out? Is something going to be done about it? Came a volley of questions from Sakura. Slow down, and in this order. Yes, he does. I picked his brain when Kiba discreetly pointed out his behavior to me, and yes, he is being watched by Anbu now. We need to know how deeply this runs before we act. This brings me to why I've informed all of you. As clan heads, he pauses and looks at Sakura and young hopefuls. It will be our unofficial mission to figure out what his objectives are. The Hokage speculated he may try to use one of us to get something. So be attentive. This is our first unofficial mission as Leaf Nin. Oh, and Sakura. She looks at him sharply. You were responsible for informing Ino, Shikamaru, and Choji when they arrived to train with Lady Natsumi. Quote, hi, she said with a small salute out of good humor, but then wavered. Aren't you afraid he will tell someone about Kurama? The now Revia led Naruto smiled mischievously. He can't, it would jeopardize his mission. He said with a snicker. But if he does tell one of you, you are to inform the Hokage at once so he can be executed. This got a nod from all present. Now, let's go see what Ada has planned for us three, shall we? Naruto said as he walked toward the castle-like manor while the others followed. The following months ensue. MMER vacation. The future Rookie 9 would meet at Ryu's estate to train not just in shinobi arts but magic as well. Eiji had come to the conclusion that all of Ryu's peers should have their mana pathways opened up and trained to specialize in at least one type of magic. It was during these lessons that the group was introduced to the time compression training, which Ryu had utilized in his years before coming to Konoha. But unlike the hyperbolic time chamber, where Eiji got the idea from originally, the time compression chamber only ages you a day. This is because it speeds up the body's regeneration time to the point of healing great wounds near instantaneously, which of course, also allowed Eiji and Lady Natsumi to train the kids into the ground. Of course, Eiji also decided to talk his three apprentices off-world on field trips over the summer break. It was while on one of these trips that Sasuke discovered he was a fire elemental. Eiji was not amused to discover the little human torch's ability. Now as the summer vacation came to an end, Eiji, Ryu, and Sasuke, who was often at their house now, were preparing for the outdoor dinner that was to be in the Japabana that was by the massive Mediterranean-style pool designed to look like a man-made lake. The pool itself was tiled with beautiful mosaics of Uzumaki swirls in reds, oranges and yellows against deep blue back ground that were visible in the crystal clear salt water with a small island temple in the middle of it. The temple was actually used in kenjutsu lessons for the Eiji's apprentices. In other words, the pool is huge. The only other people that were present at the time were Shinobu, was seated on an outdoor contemporary lounge chair reading a book of famous plays that Ryu had lent him, Kiba, who was swimming in the pool with Sasuke, and Kiba's mom, Sume Inuzuka, was currently manning the grill. Eiji had asked if the Inuzuka matriarch would come over and help with the barbecue, because in truth, he had never been that good at it. All the other times he had let Natsumi do the grilling, and she along with Anko were currently at another part of the estate teaching Ino, Sakura, and Hinata how to do a tea ceremony. Speaking of tea ceremonies, oi, Uzumaki, where did you say the Pinkett, the blonde and the Hyuga were at? Sume asked as Eiji walked over to where she was working on the ribs. Hair learning the art of the tea ceremony from Anko and Natsumi. I am going to have Ryu learn soon enough as well, as it was once a part of the curriculum in Uzushiogakure. Really? Why? Kiba asked, as he swam over to where his mom and Eiji were talking. Well pup, all Uzumakis have naturally high chakra reserves and nearly limitless stamina, however this also makes us hyper and less patient than most. So learning the tea ceremony helps to teach us patience. Well if that's the case maybe I should have my son learn as well. Mom no whining brat, and you mister turns to Eiji, who is reaching for one of the smaller ribs. Can keep your sticky paws away until these are done. Swat, Sume said smacking Eiji's hands with a pair of metal tongs. Ouch, damn woman, that hurt. Gruel, okay I get, no touchy, geez, said the sorcerer holding up his hands in surrender. Where is Ryu anyway? Asked Sasuke, who swam up beside Kiba. I have a shadow clone teaching him violin lessons at the moment, Eiji responded before he filched. On second thought, he's heading down to the pool as we speak. What? Did the clone expire? Asked Sume. More like, he stabbed it with the violin bow after getting frustrated. Sume and the rest chuckled at the revelation. They had come to the understanding that while extremely cunning, creative, imaginative, innovative and ambitious, Ryu, Naruto to friends, was somewhat lacking where patience was concerned. It was later that afternoon when most of the clan heads were gathered around the main, adult table, the kids at another table nearby, and even though only the clan heads were present there were a few kids that were invited mainly because Naruto had befriended them. Or because he felt that they would be important later on. These were Tenten, Neji, Lee and Sakura. Eiji got ready to make a few announcements. My friends, I am pleased that all of you could make it this evening, as I am very aware of the very busy lives you led. But this is not just a small summer party, as the Hokage himself has asked that I share the following information with you. Other than Ryu and Sasuke, only the Hokage is aware of what I'm about to disclose, with it being an S-class secret. Sasuke, if you would. At that, Sasuke got up from the other small table and made his way over to a Japanese sliding door panel. And slowly slid the door open to reveal. Everyone stopped and stared, their eyes wide as saucers in shock as the door opened fully. Hiyashi dropped the wine glass he had in his hand. And the only words that came were, "Makoto, is that you?" Quote. A few minutes later everyone was bombarding both Eiji and Makoto with questions. It all ended with Ryu standing on top of the kids' table taping a carbonated, grape juice-filled wine glass with a fork over his head. Slowly he got everyone's attention, at least until the glass he was taping shattered, pouring the carbonated drink on his head. The resulting huckles made him pout as he spelled himself clean and vanished the broken glass. I brought her back with my Rinnegan, and it was only after sacrificing a bunch of assassins that I had captured who had been sent to kill me to the Shinigami. I won't do it again. It took a lot of energy and had a lot of risk involved. But Ryu-kun, I thought you didn't need sacrifices to use the reviving powers of your Rinnegan. Hinata asked. Ryu sighed and ran his fingers through his hair and turned slightly to her. That is true in most cases where the body hasn't been dead long, but when the body is so bad. Lee Detir, he noticed everyone getting kinda green. You know what? Never mind. I don't think we need the details before we eat, and this is supposed to be a happy occasion. That's right, and besides she would be ashamed to let all the hard work Sume and I went to go to waste. For most of the meal it was a bit awkward with no one speaking, but it was obvious that many of the adults wanted to talk. Ryu sighed looking over at the other table. What's with them anyways? Everyone was just fine until Sasuke's mom showed up. I think they are a little shocked about it. I know I am. Neji commented. Yeah, well, it's making me irritated. Ryu replied. Hinata looked around at the food and thought of something to get her friend's mind off the adults. Ryu, I noticed that a good deal of the food tonight other than the barbecue is fish. Why is that? Ryu was brought out of his grousing and brightened at Hinata's question. Yeah, why is that, dude? Asked Kiba before chomping down on a mouthful of steak. Ryu's sweat dropped at this before answering. Well, these are actually traditional dishes from Uzu. Most people tend to think that the Uzumaki's longevity was owed only to their body's power. All life force and super immune systems, but there are other factors such as the diet of locally caught fish and the dishes they were used in. Sakura looked thoughtful at that. You know, that actually makes a lot of sense. Were there any other contributing factors, Ryu? Ryu shrugged. Not sure, though. Ada once told me that the waters around Uzu gave off a great deal of natural energy and were filled with life. Sasuke smirked at this. So you're telling us that it was something in the water? Ryu smiled while scratching his head sheepishly. Yeah, I guess so. Eiji coughed to get everyone's attention. Shikamaru, could you go and get the Hokage? It's time for that announcement. The younger Nara nodded and walked over to a shadow and disappeared into it, causing a few gasps. I take it that was a magical ability? The older Nara inquired. Indeed, Shikaku. Imagine how pleased I was when I discovered his capacity for shade magic. He just used Shadow Warp to teleport to the Hokage's tower. Hats more is that while your clan's techniques can only be used for so long before you exhaust your chakra levels, some magicka abilities like shade magic are intelligence-based. In other words, Inoichi finished. In other words, he can use those abilities for a long time without ever tiring. That's quite something. Impressive, Hiyashi remarked. Oh, that's only the beginning of what I've been teaching them, Eiji said with a wry smile as he took a sip of his wine. As everyone started to loosen up and begin to talk, Shikamaru returned through the shadows with the Hokage holding his hand. I'm here, you may begin, Eiji. Eiji bowed slightly and turned to address everyone. You all may have noticed this already, but the standards at the academy are slipping slightly, therefore this summer marks a change in the academy and its curriculum. With the Hokage's permission and blessing, I've begun to renovate the academy. This, however, means that the students there now will be staying an extra 2 years. This got many objections from the kids' table. Silence, Eiji said, magnifying his voice to shut the kids up. You did not let me. FLSO means that there will be a change in how teams are formed. Teams will alternate their 3 genins on a 2-week basis to better ensure teamwork and familiarize each other with your abilities and strengths. This will start with the final years of the academy. In other words, from now on the final years of the academy will be spent doing D-rank missions so that when you graduate you can go immediately on your first C-rank missions. There were a lot of whooping noises from the kids' table while the adults exchanged looks with each other. There are other changes as well, aren't there? Shikaku surmised. Eiji nodded, smiling. Yes, there are. There will be new electives that the kids can choose from. Here are the lists, Eiji said, handing out pamphlets using magic. They all took them and read the following. Tacticians of Tomorrow. Uses board games like Go, Shogi, and chess to teach tactics. Young Integrators Club. Teaches knowledge of human psyche as well as phobias and how to exploit them. Junior Mednans. Teaches about the human body and different poisons and cures. Acting and Roles. Teaches speaking, acting, and the skills needed to fool an enemy. Eiji spoke again, getting everyone's attention. There are some things that are yet to be added to that. I'll be sending that to you later. Quote, Eiji turned to the Hokage. Now, sir, would you like to join us? Ever since you gave me that advice on using clones, I've had plenty of free time, so yes, that would niece. The third Hokage answered, smiling while taking the offered seat. The rest of the night was spent eating and enjoying each other's company, with only a little bit of the time discussing the future of the village. Later that night, Makoto looked up from the book she was reading in the library to Eiji, whose head shot up from his work desk with a haunted look on his face. Was that Sasuke? Then Naruto burst in his PJs. Ada, come quick. The elder Uzumaki stood from his seat and made his way to the door while calling over his shoulder. Not again. Come, Lady Makoto, I will need you with me, it will help. Quote, Eiji and Ryu ran through the hall with Makoto to the Sasuke's room. Sasuke had taken to staying as a permanent resident at the Uzumaki estate. Eiji opened he door to find Sasuke in the middle of a night terror again. They had a hard time waking him up, and eventually Eiji went into the young Uchiha's mind to rouse him. When they got him to wake up and calm down, Eiji started ranting. That makes the 3rd time this year. I swear, when I get my hands on your eldest Makoto, I'm going to take him over my leg and tan his little white Uchiha hide. That's if I don't Shinra Tensei him to the moon first, he went a little overboard with his charade, don't you think, Sasuke? Ryu, Naruto mumbled. Sasuke looked up from where his mother held him at the two Uzumakis. The image of a red tribal flame wheel against a gold background, his new, immortal, Mangekyo Sharingan spinning wildly. No, I'll get him, you guys. I forgive him, but first I get pay back for the mental scars. July 20th. Summer was ending, or more specifically summer break for the academy was ending, and soon the new school year would begin at the newly renovated Nin Academy. Ad made so many new surprising discoveries about his students, but currently the most aggravating one was Naruto and Sasuke's love of heavy metal. Music was blaring all throughout the Uzumaki Namika's manor, which was why Eiji and Makoto were currently outside of the room the two boys shared. Knock knock knock, bang bang bang. Naruto, Sasuke, tone your racket down now. Music gets louder. Eiji, turn to Makoto. Did they just turn that music up even louder? I think they did, Makoto answered. Narrows eyes. Right then, Makoto, stand behind me please, Eiji ground out through clenched teeth. Naruto and Sasuke were blissfully unaware of the dragon they had managed to awaken on the other side of the door. This was mostly because the carefree boys had headsets on while listening to their music and singing in unison at points. However, they had forgot that the music was still hearable to those without the headsets, or they simply didn't give a fuck. They're kids, what ya gonna do? They were forcefully brought back to reality when the door to Naruto, Ryu's bedroom, was blown off its hinges, revealing an angry-looking Eiji Uzumaki with smoke coming off the tips of his outstretched index fingers. All right, Makoto, I'll take the blonde one, you take the dark-haired one. Eiji grinned manically at the two boys who were now shaking and holding on to each other for dear life. All right, you two, time for an impromptu sparring survival lesson. August 4th, Uzumaki-sama, how did you teach Ryu? Anything. We currently find eldest Uzumaki in Ryu's academy teacher Ruka Yumino enjoying the some jasmine tea while taking in the beauty of the Uzumaki estate's rose garden. The young teacher had found Ryu and Sasuke at Ichiraku's after a day of spell research in the old Uchiha district and decided to walk them home today, and Eiji had invited him to stay for a bit and relax after a hard day of preparing for the next school year at the academy. Eiji took a sip of tea while thinking over the question. He of course knew what young man was referring to. The fact of the matter was that while Naruto was frighteningly intelligent, his ward was not someone who could sit still all day and learn. Which really described any Uzumaki to begin with, even himself. The trick was in the method of delivery, and this information would be important for Iruka in the coming school year. Eiji set his cup on the saucer on the patio table. Let me ask you a question first, Iruka. Do you know what Ryu's favorite play is? Iruka blinked owlishly for a moment before thinking back. I think it's a play called A Midsummer Night's Dream, he answered. He seems rather in awe of Puck. He added as afterthought, that is to be expected, you know, especially after he actually met him, but that's unimportant. You see, by knowing that I can easily assume you also know that Ryu has a fondness for plays and the theater in general. Do you know how that happened? Eiji asked. Upon getting a negative, he continued. It has to do with how he was taught. Almost all Uzumakis are kinesthetic learners. It makes teaching a somewhat challenging, Iruka suggested. I was going to say nearly impossible. But I like yours better, makes it sound less taxing. Anyway, when I was first teaching Ryu to read, I would use refrigerator magnets and crossword puzzles on white erase boards. When he got to where he could read well, I started to have him read from scripts and act out scenes from different plays. It is one of the reasons he likes theater so much. I would have him take Invento Rye of the ingredient storage for potions to teach him math, and would use puzzles to teach him logic. For history, I would show him pictures of the place and time I was talking about and have him imagine what it was like. The point is that in order to teach him anything, really, you have to actively engage him. Plus it's just a hell of a lot more fun. Iruka had by this time got out a pen and notebook and started taking notes. Much to Eiji's amusement. August 9th. Okay Sakura, I think I've got all the essence collectors around the first half off the district set up. Are you done setting them up around the rest of second half of the compound? Sasuke asked through the walkie-talkies that Eiji lent them. Almost done, Sasuke-kun, came the reply, followed by a clicking noise. Okay. All done. All right. Good. Head over to my old house and we can begin the extraction of the sorrows. Back at Sasuke's old house. So what are we doing again? Don't get me wrong, I understand the theory behind it. But it was a pain to get a general grasp of it from reading what you gave me on paper. After all, Master Uzumaki has only taught me sword magic and bardic magic because of my voice. Sakura asked as she watched Sasuke adjust the arcane equipment they had been working. I could give a simplified overview of what we're doing here, he said as worked at a keyboard with odd glowing symbols coming from it. Alright, you know that one of my areas of specialty is dark magic. I've recently been researching spells that deal with negative aspects of emotions. I had come up with a spell that is similar to how killing intent works, however instead of being centered around the dooming feeling that makes a person feel like they are about to die, it focuses on filling a person with despair and sorrow that comes from living in anguish and regret. The spell I have in mind could be used to cause large numbers of people to commit suicide, which would be really useful in battle. However, in order to craft such a spell, I need a large amount of despair and sorrow. I had asked Master Uzumaki where I could find such a thing, and he told me sorrow could be collected from departed souls that had yet to move on because of the regret and despair that burdened them in life. He then gave me a spirit tracker, and sent Ryu with me to help carry the equipment. Without actually telling him what he was helping me with, we finally ended up here at the Uchiha district, where there happens to be the largest concentration of wayward spirits who are carrying around a shitload of angst and sorrow. Ryu started to ask if I thought the place might be haunted. I was confused when he asked that, and asked if he knew why he was even carrying around the equipment to begin with. Sasuke started snickering. Sasuke-kun, I'm sorry, it's just so funny. Turns out Ryu has a big phobia ghosts. Needless to say, I decided to treat him to Ichiraku's to get him to calm down. At this point Sakura was giggling too. That is sorta funny. Though just a bit sad as well. Please tell me that Master Uzumaki is going to do something about that. The young Uchiha answered as he continued to fiddle with the controls. I had brought it to his attention and he seemed very much put out at discovering it, so yeah, I think he will. Anyway, the essence collectors we set up all over the district will collect sorrows from the spirits and channel it all to the spell crafting altar we set up here, he said as nodded to the altar in front of him as he dusted his hands off, and I'll be able to craft the spell. At the same time, it will release the souls of generations of Uchiha from their burdens and allow them to pass on. Two birds with one stone when you think about it. Sasuke finished. Sasuke-kun, that's brilliant. Sakura gushed. Yeah, I am, aren't I? Sasuke said, smirking while he activated the machine. August 22nd. That does it. This irrational fear of ghosts has to stop. Eiji shouted, angrily as he towered over a trembling Naruto. But Ada, ghosts are scary. Naruto argued weakly. Enough. You must have got this weakness from your father. It certainly didn't come from your mother's side. How do you figure that? Asked Sasuke from his place on the floor where he was reading yet another tome on black magic. Naruto glared at the traitor who was responsible for his Ada snapping at him. It's very simple really. There's a reason why the Uzumakis are seal masters. For over 250 years the Uzumaki clan acted as the guardians of the Raikudo Sennin's Shrine. As its keepers and priests on Spiral Temple Isle off the coast of Uzu, we became adept in the sealing arts through years of enhancing our already impressive sealing skills that we honed as we learned to seal off the shrine from the damaging effects of time and the elements, as well as security seals and of course, seals to ward off malevolent spirits that would inevitably be drawn to the spiritual power of the site. Wow, but wait, I thought that Lady Natsumi said that the Uzumaki were a branch of the Senju. Hinata inquired. We were the priest sect of the clan skilled in sealing and the sword arts. Just as the Hyuga were the monk and spymasters branch of the Uchiha clan. Said as a sly look settled on the mage's face. Gasp. I had a feeling you lot weren't aware of that, but that is a story for another time. Right now, you are all going on a 3-month-long training trip alone without me off-world. Don't worry about missing school since the unique manner of mine and Nar. Yuto's world travel magic makes it where we can choose how much time passes while we are away from our designated world of origin. Everyone perked up at hearing this. Because of where you'll be staying. I've decided to use the aging spell on all of you, making you lot age to be about 15 to 16 while away. By now everyone was in rapt attention and Hinata was busy looking over at Naruto. Oh, while he was busy thinking of her while looking out of the corner of his eye. Which world are you sending the three of us to master? Sasuke asked. Actually it will be 4 of you. Sakura has finished. Head her sorcerer's knights training under Lady Natsumi and will be acting as your knight Sasuke. And as to the where, well, you'll all be going to World 11420 DP, the elder Uzumaki said while sneering nastily at what was obviously something of an inside joke. Though as Sasuke glanced over at his best friend who had become as white as a sheet and was now trembling all over. He could probably guess what the joke was. Your contact mentor while you're there, as well as the person who will explain what is expected of you while in that world's name is clockwork, and as the resident guardian of time. I expect you all to be respectful. Sasuke glanced back over to Ryu, who had now passed out cold on the floor with drool coming out of his mouth. Despite all this, Eiji had continued to talk. You all have till this afternoon to pack base necessities you wish to take with you, but not clothes, since you will go shopping once you arrive at your destination. I will supply you with clothes for you. Older forms that will be off-world appropriate before you leave. The elder Uzumaki finished. After the little debriefing, Eiji made his way over to his charge's passed-out form on the couch and whispered in his ear. Naruto. The ramen is dying and the orange rolls are drowning. Kami's Presev US. Save the ramen. Rescue the orange rolls. Ryu shouted as he looked around in a panic. Then he noticed that his Ada and friends were laughing at him. Jerk, he muttered as he glared at his great-grandfather. September 12th. And with this, I hereby announce the opening of the new Konoha homeless shelter. Ryu said as he cut the ribbon to the new building. For the past month or so Ryu had been using his clan's wealth and his Ada's influence as the Hokage's advisor, as well as his own ability in magic, to build and open soup kitchens, new orphanages, shelters, and so on and so forth. A few had begun to call him the People's Hope, or as Hinata and Sasuke had dubbed him, Prince Valiant. Much to his ire the moniker had stuck. Sasuke's reasoning was that it served him right for making his own moniker, Prince of Fans, stick at the academy. However, because of his Ada's volunteer work at T&I and his ruthlessness in negotiations, Eiji had come to be known as Kindness as Shadow. At least that's what some Anbu had jokingly called him. Turns out Eiji had constructed a very unique torture chamber for Anko to use in the T&I building. The room's abilities were so feared that it had garnered the name, the Nightmare Cage. Or the Phobos Suite, as Ibiki referred to it. Anyway, with L of the adoration Ryu got for his acts of goodwill, he was well on his way to becoming the village's sweetheart, which is exactly what he needed if he intended to become Hokage later on in life. As really a step to his true goal, to unite the elemental nations in peace and become the world of Nindo's sorcerer supreme. But first he needed to gain a respected, powerful position in the land of fire first. October 4th. I'm getting too old for this shit, Hiruzen said as he glared at the endless mounds of paperwork in front of his desk, on his desk, and well everywhere in his office. Even with the he now used on the great cage's bane known as paperwork, it still left him exhausted. He had asked Eiji if there was any other solution, to which the elder had replied, I can only hint that retirement would truly defeat it. Hiruzen almost cried when he heard that, because Eiji refused to take his place. That was until Eiji told him something that he wished he'd known earlier. For now, he kept himself busy working while he waited for Eiji to return with his replacement. The very thought that he could have been rid of this nightmare sooner just made him boil with rage at Th. E2 Uzumaki's for forgetting a very valuable piece of information. Flashback no jutsu. Eiji, ever since you told me the secret to defeating paperwork, I've had much more time for myself, but I'd really like to retire soon. Are you sure you won't take the hat? Little Saruzen, why haven't you asked Naruto to go and retrieve his parents from their off-world vacation so Minato can retake the hat? Hiruzen's face reddened when Eiji called him his childhood moniker before what followed truly set in. "Wait a minute, are you saying Minato is alive? How can that be?" shouted the aged Cage. The 20-something looking mage seemed confused for a second before he answered. "My ward had me come here and rob their graves for their bodies after he unlocked his Rinnegan and discovered the part of their chakra was sealed in his seal back when he was 3. By the way, you really need to up the security of that place, it's pitiful. What if someone used Edo Tensei? Anyway, he used his Rinnegan to bring them back. Since then, the two have been staying in one of the universes on vacation, especially after Kushina ended up pregnant with the triplets. Didn't he tell you any of this?" G inquired, obviously confused about the lack of information. "No, it must have slipped his mind," Hiruzen ground out. "Young man, you will not clench your teeth like that at me. I'll go talk to him and find out which world he sent them to. I think he said something about leaving them on Gaia 6 years after Meteor Fall. Something about Minato studying under Sid Highwind. Anyway, I'll go fetch them and then bring them back here. Until then, you be a good young man and do your work. I won't have you slacking off like how you tried when I was teaching you seals." "Yes sir," the elder Sarutobi mumbled. And flashback no jutsu. The elderly ninja was brought out of his brooding at a knock at his door. "Come in." Eiji walked in, followed by the advisors Homura and Kaharu. Eiji, have you found Minato yet?" asked Hiruzen. "Yes, that's actually why I'm here. You are going to need to inform the Anbu of his and Kushina's return as well as their children. The 2 boys' names are Raishin and D. Hurricane and the girl's name is Tsunami. The boys have spiky blood red hair with aqua-colored eyes and the girl has her father's blonde hair with ice blue eyes. They are around your grandson's age, I believe. You will need to get the papers together to help with their citizenship. There is also the manner in which they will make their return to address, so the village isn't sent into a panic," Eiji explained calmly. The aging Hokage lifted an eyebrow. "Oh, would you care to explain?" The elder Uzumaki let out a long-suffering sigh. "My grandson-in-law has decided he wants to pilot his new airship, the Karakuya, through the dimensional portal." "Airship?" In response to the question, Eiji pulled out his pipe, lit it and took a few puffs of it. As he blew out, the smoke took the form of what Hiruzen assumed was a miniature of the aforementioned airship. As you might guess, this is a miniature version of the craft in question. Airships in general are a type of skycraft capable of long-distance flight and transporting heavy loads. Minato is planning on building a docking station as well as a hangar for building a small fleet of them once he's back. He also plans on training Nin to fly them," Eiji said as the smoky airship sailed around the room before dissipating. "What would they be used for?" Hiruzen asked Eiji, though he already had a few ideas. However, it was Homura who spoke up. "We had inquired the same thing. Apparently he was thinking of using them for transport of dignitaries as well as supply transport across Hinokuni during peacetime. And during times not of peace," came the inquiry. This time it was Kaharu who spoke up. "All of them will be outfitted for war, some more heavily than others and some less conspicuously than others. While Minato shares the dream of peace that both you and the first dream of, he knows to be realistic about such things and to take precaution for eventualities." Eiji once again took the floor and spoke. "I will need to have my apprentices guarded by some nin as they help me and Ryu open the portal. It requires more than one person to transport something as large as an airship between worlds and can be very taxing even for someone as gifted as Ryu and myself." Now, at this moment, Eiji held up a hand and the rest of the world stood still in monotone shades of gray, leaving the 3 advisors and the Hokage free from the time-halting spell. "I believe your former teammates and I have something important to tell you." Hiruzen's face became even more serious as he nodded for them to continue. Homura spoke first. "Ever since Danzo started to realize he no longer had control over Kaharu and he's taken even greater steps to secure a firm grip on the Konoha Civilian Representative Committee. It's one of the reasons for the recent increase in the paperwork that's been flooding your office and now ours as well." Kaharu to her turned to speak as her face gained a sly look. "It for this reason that we've dead to give Eiji our support and aid in setting up a little meeting with its members once Minato is sworn back into office. We feel that he will be most successful in convincing the representative Vase to step down from their positions and let someone more qualified take their place. Is that so? Well, Eiji, how do you plan on accomplishing that? Asked the aged Hokage. With the method I use on anything too stubborn or too stupid to listen to reason, Eiji commented lightly while examining his nails before looking up with an icy expression. Find what they're emotionally invested in, and exploit the hell out of it. Whether it be their wealth, their family, or their lives. The Hokage gave long-suffering sigh and nodded. Is there any other information you wish to discuss with me? How I.'s agents code-named Ezio and Leonardo infiltration of route going? He asked. We hit a few small snags, but we should be ready within the next year or so to usurp control of it from the brat. As planned, I will take control of it as its head and instate the new rules and regulations. Also, I think that Agent Ezio is showing signs of a normally fatal illness and I've begun to treat him for said affliction. Good. Danzo is still being watched by Anbu, but I have a sinking suspicion that he has found some way to still control his forces, so we will have to keep vigilant. Hiruzen said as he motioned D for Eiji to cancel the time suspension spell. Eiji raised his hand like before and dropped it, canceling the spell's effects as he resumed talking if he were finishing a thought. Quote ellipsis dot. Have you given any thought as to what to do about Mizuki? From the reports your agents have given me, I believe he will make his move before the end of the summer. Just continue to have him watched and I will handle the necessary preparation for his capture and detainment, as well as debriefing Minato about it. If that is all, then I have perpetrations for a dimensional spell to make. October 5th. Ryu Street. Udon, his father's head on the Hokage mountain overlooking the village. Somewhere down below, Sasuke and Hinata were getting into place to help his Ada and him hold open the dimensional portal. Each of them had a communication seal on their cheeks and were all wearing crystal pendants that would help with the task. Speaking of the crystal pendants now, I better pay attention and concentrate, he said as he began chanting the spell. The chant itself was not needed to be said out loud, but doing it anyways helped him to focus better. 5 minutes later, above in the sky there was a flash of RPLE lightning and storm clouds began to gather and swirl into a myriad of colors. From the swirling vortex of rainbow energies, a large narrow red craft made of metal descended, floating above the village. Welcome home, my family. Ellipsis dot. October 8th. Knock, knock, knock. Aniki, we just found something unbelievably super cool. Come and see. Knock, knock, knock. Ryu, Naruto's eyebrow twitched slightly. His was the 4th time today since he had gotten home from academy that his adorable, annoying little brothers had decided that whatever had caught their particular fancy was just too important not to share with their loving older brother. Now don't get him wrong, he loved his baby brothers, he really did, but they really should stop with these constant interruptions. After all, it was driving him fucking insane. Naruto got up from the floor where he and Sasuke had been going over their parts in the academy's play, The Utterly Gutsy Shinobi. Sasuke shot him a peculiar look, and made his way over to the door, where he plastered on the most pleased smile he could manage and opened the door. Hello my adorable Ototos, what can I do for my favorite little fireballs? Both of them gave matching foxy grins. Camis above, he was beginning to feel sorry for poor Iruka-sensei. Hari, we found this out in the rose garden, Aniki, attached to one of the bush's limbs. Right, great-grandfather Eiji cut it off for us. But when we asked about it, Hari, he said we should ask you, Rai, so we sought you out. In unison, and here we are. Ryu's eye twitched again as his smile widened slightly. I can see that, he responded in a kind voice. In the background, Sasuke was laughing his ass off. Ryu had to take a deep breath in as he calmed himself before actually looking at the unbelievably super cool thing in question. What you have here, boys, is the chrysalis of a Uzu Emperor butterfly, he said as he conjured a jar and put the plant cutting with the chrysalis inside before sealing the lid and poking small holes in the top. As he did this, however, he began before launching into a small lecture about Uzu butterflies in general, by the end of which his brothers were looking at him with glazed over vacant stares. So this thing will become butterfly in about a week? Yes. Well gee Aniki, you could have just told us that. Before Ryu could respond to that, the two D heads had chirped, "Bye Anki," and dashed off. Ryu made his way back over to where Sasuke was smiling at him cheekily. "May the kamis bless you with many inquisitive little gakis," Ryu said while glaring at him. Sasuke stopped smiling and looked pale. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.